on the watch. So the panel this week reflects upon Ireland-Japan, that win for the women's team this morning, and we'll speak about wider issues in the game. We're going to be joined on the line shortly by Alison Miller and Jackie Shiels, but Michelle Claffey's with us at the moment. Our rugby coverage on Off the Ball, thanks to Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in. Just go through the details of the game. 57 points to 22. We were 15-0 down early doors, but then we dominated the game. A hat-trick of tries for Niamh Jones, one for Aoife Doyle, tries for debutantes Aoife Dalton and Maeve Deely. Chloe Pearce, Molly Scuffle McCabe and Emma Hooban also on the mark. An excellent performance. One of two tests we have against Japan. Obviously a lot of changes in the women's game. 43 professional contracts coming into the game. So changing times with Greg McWilliams now, the coach of the women's team, and a very impressive display with Dana O'Brien starting at number 10 today. Michelle, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, Michelle, you're very welcome. Just to kind of reflect on the performance and the result, maybe Japan were poor, but I suppose as much as we could have asked for today.
You know what? Looking back on the game, like Ireland just were so dominant up front. Japan might have been poor, but Ireland took every opportunity they could and they just played when they could. And they really just kind of bounced on any of Japan's mistakes and just went for it, which is what you want to see after a shaky start.
Yeah, 15-0 down. So, I know the TV pictures, there was issues with Japan, but once the TV turned on and we got the coverage from TG Cahir, it was very much a case that Ireland dominated the ball up front. And every time I seemed to see the ball in hand of Niamh Jones, she was coming up from a try, which had been kind of having a forward plan and a forward platform.
Yeah, and that's what happens. Like I was just looking at the number of caps that the forwards have. There's 128 caps in the pack versus 38, and like forwards win games and backs decide by how much. And today was definitely a feature of they had a platform, they had them all, and you know what? They found what they were good at and they stuck with it. It wasn't a case of, let's try something different. No, we're good at this. Let's keep going and pushing forward. And the maul worked for Ireland today. And Japan didn't know how to stop it, and they didn't even contest the line-out time, really.
Yeah, there was 7 of the 8 forwards that started against Scotland in the Six Nations that were in the team today. But you need a lot of coaching for that to all click.
Like, that's consistency when the selection and consistency of people understanding their role and what they need to do. So, yeah, that's what happens when you have a consistent picking at international level.
So I think the pick of the tries in the first half that I saw was Aoife Doyle. So it was a really pacey finish, a lovely move involving great hands from Enya Breen and Maeve Deely.
Yeah, it was just, I think Ireland nearly played one out. So instead of playing off Dana at 10, they played off Enya. So they ran a lovely DSP, got the ball into Maeve Deely's hands, and she just put the pace on. I played club with Maeve, and the girl can move. And it was brilliant to see that a lot of the times they're getting their hands free to give that offload, to give that extra pass, and like Doyle got in the corner there, which was brilliant to see for her.
So would you have known from the club, is it Blackrock, is it?
Yes, Blackrock, yeah.
Yeah. So you've known from the club what she's capable of, and this is a young team with pacey players, and it's great to see her translate that from the club to the other side of the world. Yeah,
but the thing is, these players are not, they may be young in age, but their rugby age is actually a lot older than people who are their age. So Maeve Deely's been involved in the sevens for a while, Natasha Behan's in the sevens for a while, but they've played representative underage. Maeve for Connacht with Bevan and Aveen, so they understand how to play in the high level tension areas, and that's the pathway that you need to develop for Ireland to be successful in the future. And it's coming to fruition already with the result today, and also the players getting game time.
How did Dana O'Brien do? Once again, a 15s debut for her at number 10. Some of her kicking from the tee was excellent, but obviously, what about the rest of her play?
So she probably had a lot of help from Enya as well throughout the game, but her kicking, she got 6 out of 9 conversions. She's a lefty, which is always something that Greg loves to have on the team. So it'll be interesting come Six Nations time. I know it's a long way away, but it's going to come around pretty quickly. What he's going to do, because will he have Dana at 10, a left-footed kicker? Will he have Stacey at 12, left-footed kicker? So it just gives a world of options for him to go forward in the game and see how she gets on next week.
We also had, as you say, Natasha Behan, Aoife Dalton as debutantes. How did they get on behind the scrum?
They were able to, Aoife scored a fantastic try, but this was from the patience that the forwards had in around that area of the try line. They didn't panic, they set it up, they took their slow ball, they got a bit of forward momentum, and Aoife just ran. They had a lovely setup of someone unders and overs off the 10, so Aoife ran that lovely short line, that close to the line. That's what you want to be doing, hitting those kind of hard yards, and she got up for a beautiful try there.
This is quite a historic series. This is not the kind of thing that we would have been having, maybe a team going to Japan that's not in a World Cup situation. You're seeing even the progression of them even going out there and playing that game.
It kind of puts down a marker that Ireland want to qualify for the next World Cup, and this is the start of it now. They're getting into more games, because you need to play more games just outside the Six Nations. Like one year we had one in November International, another year we had 2 November International. You need games, and like you can see the Six Nations ended in April. This is August. So there's been only 3 months off rather than the 9 months off that they would have had usually. You want the games being played, you want the girls understanding what they're doing, and the composure around the ruck, around breakdown. They didn't panic, they were clearing the lines, they set it up. They're much more composed now than they were in the Six Nations, I feel, when they're exiting even.
These news of 43 professional contracts, Michelle, yourself and Alison and Jackie were all signatories to that letter to, I suppose, express disapproval to the government last year. Have you seen, an adequate response from your perspective in terms of how the game is being run now?
So there's a lot of different elements to it, because there was an internal review, there was the letter, and then there was, I suppose, not qualifying for the World Cup. So there was a number of things, moving parts and I suppose the letter was something there to try and show the players were not happy with the situation, or past players. So they're moving in the right direction. They've appointed Gillian now to develop the pathway to implement it. We have loads of underage structures there between Leinster, between the northeast. Sorry, I know from Leinster, there's like individual areas around Leinster. I know Munster is doing, and have always done, a great job with their underage. Connacht is coming along. They have their development team as well as their main team. And Ulster have always been quite strong as well. Like they won their Interpros 3 years ago, I think. And you can see that Niamh Jones part of that. I think maybe the Kieran. But it's great to see that it's coming through the underage progression, and it's building up the profile of Irish women's rugby.
This is Gillian McDarby now, so she's the RFU's head of women's performance and pathway. So what would she be doing now? What would her role be?
So whatever strategy is being created, Gillian is there to implement it, make sure all the stakeholders are buying in and delivering, and that's what you want. Before this, we had said we had a strategy. But who was accountable? There was like probably different pockets. Now you have one person who's leading the charge in terms of delivering this strategy for the IRFU, and to make sure that the domestic game as well, the international game, is moving forward.
And are the contracts good? Will it give each player a platform to dedicate themselves to rugby and not be juggling their life, their work, the game, everything that you had to do?
It'll give them an opportunity to see how much they can, how much better they can be as a player, rather than having to juggle everything. I feel, between recovery, like not having to go to work 2 days after playing a match. And all workplaces try and be as, I suppose, supportive as they can. But at the end of the day, they have a business to run. So hopefully this will allow players to live comfortably. Now, I don't know where they'll be based, if it's in Dublin versus other places. Like we all know about the price of rent in Dublin. So hopefully it'll be enough to enable them to live as well as perform at the highest level.
We had Cora Staunton on the show a few weeks ago, Michelle, and she was speaking about how she's living the dream and in Australia, playing for the Greater Western Sydney Giants in the AFLW. Sorry. Did you wish you had the chance to play under these conditions? It's almost like one of the football players 30, 40 years ago in England, that now they're looking at the Premier League and going, oh, well, I wish I had that opportunity. It's just something you just have to hold your hands up about, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, of course, everyone wishes that they could play rugby and get paid for it. You wish it was your job, but it's great to see that it's happening. It's not just a dream for everybody. Yeah. It's actually a reality for some players, and the output that will come from this won't be felt immediately, but today was pretty good. So even like these players are playing for contracts now. They have to put their best foot forward in order to be even up for selection for a contract. So today was a pretty good step forward for them. So it'll be interesting to see the result next week. But I am, when you're looking at the players that went on today, they could have put on more players earlier. Like Sam Monaghan limped off there towards the end. I would have been taking her off after about 50 minutes. The game was won. Give Taryn the more time, give her more exposure, rather than risking more players.
Did you play Gaelic football, didn't you, Michelle, growing up? So with Offaly, did these skills help you when it came to transitioning to playing rugby for Ireland?
So I actually went back and played football last year when there was a little bit of a break from rugby when I wasn't selected. Of course, like, you're determined, you're competitive, but your hand-eye coordination, just your engine, having to understand, read a game, like, these are all skills that you can be built on for rugby. So I think it was really important to have another sport. I started very late when I was 21. But, like, you weren't coming green to rugby. Like, you'd watched it. I've been to loads of rugby games before that. So it was just something that you added to it. You just had to learn a lot of technical aspects of the games.
Would you encourage young women, young men to play various different types of sports before they get into a rugby career? Or do you feel that younger people need to be transitioning into rugby because it's quite a technical sport at an earlier age? Because you talked about being 21 there.
Yeah, I think you should play all sports. They all link into each other, like even gymnastics or something like that, just so something that you can have a competitive edge. If you just are rugby only, you bring nothing new to it. Whereas if you're to take a high ball, you can practice that in a rugby pitch, but you're always doing it in a football match. And like how you can hold yourself around the pitch. So you're bringing other skills, you're meeting other people, and I definitely think playing other sports has benefited me. I played soccer, I played Gaelic, anything at all I could try, basketball. You just enjoy the camaraderie of it as well. So it's definitely something you have to try to bring into the rugby world. And to be honest, the ref is there to help you learn the laws of the game as well.
We have Alison Miller, former winger and Grand Slam winner, on the line. Alison, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, John?
You're not too bad, Alison. That was a pretty impressive result. Whatever about Japan's performance today, but 57-22 is not bad. 9 tries.
Yeah, I started losing count of who was scoring tries. They were coming so fast and so thick. Yeah, it was good. And I think what really impressed me is obviously there was a little bit of technical difficulties with the coverage. So we didn't see the first 30 and 40 minutes.
You didn't need to see that.
No, but that the fact, I just really impressed with their leadership ability to come from 15-0 down. That was really, really impressive. And I think obviously the new caps playing particularly well. I think Ireland really exposed Japan's limitations in the scrum and line out, and they used the advantage to put themselves in the right parts of the park and use their kicking game. So it was really positive. Delighted to see those new girls playing really, really well. Obviously, Japan had some defensive issues, and Ireland were really, really good, and they played really well. But I think we've some fantastic players there now in Sam Monaghan and Niamh Jones, and I think the back line today showed their potential. So it'll be exciting to see how this team develops. Greg McWilliams is a very, very good coach. He coached me obviously back in the day, and he's quirky and he can be eccentric and he's a different way, but I think he's a really, really good coach, and I think it's good to see where it's going now, and I think they'll take great optimism from this game. So despite what the opposition presented them today, all they could control was their own performance, and they certainly did that. They put 57 points on them.
If Spain is the nadir, losing to Spain and that was that World Cup qualifier, if that was 0% and 100% say has beat New Zealand at a World Cup or win the Grand Slam as you did, Alison, where are we in the graph? Are we 20, 30, 40% back to where we should be?
That's hard to say, and I think obviously Ireland would be disappointed they're not playing in this World Cup, because I think from that performance today would be interesting to see where this team would be in a World Cup. But I think we're in the right direction with contracts. We're in the right direction with 18-year-olds playing, like Dan O'Brien today at 18, playing in her first game at 10 and looking really comfortable, looking really relaxed in that role. Didn't have an outstanding game, but to be honest, I think at 18 and your first cap, you're better off to have a solid game, which she really, really did. So other players like Aoife Dalton. So I can't realistically or honestly answer that question.
Yeah.
We're not up with New Zealand or the Englands of the world yet, but I think they're in the right direction. And I suppose with Gillian McDarby getting the new job advertised by the RFU, they'll have to really work hard, and players will really have to work hard. But putting those structures in place, we're certainly on the right path to trying to get there. We've got the structures now, so I think hopefully we'll take away the barriers to becoming a successful team. We're just going to take away all those barriers to what it. Because it's only now that I'm retired 2 or 3 years and I'm trying to get into the gym every day or go for a run. I'm like, I don't know how I fit it in the lifestyle that I did. So
you're a PE teacher, Alison, aren't you?
Yeah. But even still, you're like, how did I do that? How did I do 2 sessions a day every day, do camps, I did a lot of my own extras with, Phil Healy, speed coach, Shane McCormick, good friend of mine, Joey Carberry Senior. I just went and found extra things to do to try and replicate being a professional athlete, but rest and recovery and all that obvious things that we don't have to highlight. But I think what these contracts are going to do is make those players' lives easier and easier for them to perform, and just strip away, as I said, those barriers. And I think there's small little things that have improved as well. It's great to see. I know this is ridiculous to see the bagman back in, to see the manager Andy Weir, the bagman in, bringing those little things in that we didn't have in, I suppose, the Anthony Eddie era. So I'm excited to see where this team goes, because and I'd be interested to see who is given contracts. There's 43, but from my calculation, I was a professional sevens player for 3 to 4 years, and you probably will have about 20 sevens contracts.
Right.
So that leaves 23. I'm guessing, or I'm kind of inferring or estimating 23 contracts for the 15s players. So who will be offered them? What they'll have to be flexible at the moment, because the game is evolving and players are at work, and we have some of those young girls in college. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But and a full-time athlete is tough too. Like, I did it for 4 years. It's not all rosy either, and it's a tough life too. But at least you're in a position to be the best player that you can be, as opposed to trying to battle like a lot of different things when you're working and you're trying to train. Because essentially it got to the stage, I think, with Ireland, that all the other countries were doing it. That's, I don't want to say the expression now, but it was
don't say
literally it. Yeah. I was about to. It was literally like they were put a little bit under pressure to do it because the game was going that way. And sometimes you got to have those countries like England, New Zealand leading the way, so other countries will follow. So I'm delighted that those girls are getting the opportunity to do that. Pity didn't happen a few years ago.
Yeah, we've Alison Miller and Michelle Claffey on the line speaking about the Irish women's team 57-22 win. And Michelle, can the 7s and the 15s rest together in a positive way? That is there enough of a pool of players to have professional contracts around both sports, or do we need to be like maybe prioritising one or the other?
Well, there has to be. They have to live beside each other at this stage, because they're being put in the one pot. So we'll see what happens in the near future, like Alison said, about the split between the 23-20, maybe, who knows. And then will there be crossover with people who made selects? Well, not select, but will they be put into a bubble? Will they be available for all 6 nations?
Do you think we can narrow the gap to England and France quite quickly, Michelle? Afraid we just seem to have lost Michelle there. Alison, do you think we can narrow the gap to England and France quite quickly?
I don't think it's going to be overnight, but I think we have a small player pool, which can be a disadvantage, but I also think it can be a major advantage. I think we're probably missing a trick in that we need to get someone out there scouting the country and getting these girls into the game. Like Dan O'Brien from Tullow today is 18, and she's an example of a girl from a small club in Carlow who's been putting in the work for a good few years. She's played underage with Tullow, with the minis, with the boys. I believe she used to be out practicing her kicking with her dad when the senior men or women's team were training, and she's been there all the way up. So coached by some great coaches, Ciara Kinch and the late Gerard O'Brien, and I'm sure Gerard O'Brien would have been very proud of her today, as Ciara Kinch is today. But there's players like that out there. We have a small country, you can use it to our advantage. So I mean, instead of trying to scout 40 million of the population, we've only got 4 or 5. So how do we use that to our advantage, that we find these gems around the country? And I think it'd be great to have someone that's solely employed in the RFU to go around and to find those players, because they are there. That's where I came from. I came from Portlaoise, which we played the lowest division rugby in the whole country, and I suppose I didn't get picked to play for Leinster or anything like that because of my perceived club at the time, but I was, I suppose, a bit stubborn, so I went to Connacht and made it that way. So there was more of me out there as well. I just think we have to be, because we're a small country. New Zealand is a small country too, but I suppose their rugby is like our GA. It's in their DNA. It's their GA. But we can certainly close the gap. But I think success will breed success. So I think if this team could win a Grand Slam or 6 Nations in 4 to 5 years' time, and we work from there. But we've got to be really imaginative about how we do things and use that small player pool to our advantage. while trying to increase it, obviously.
Do you think the professional contracts coming into the game now will maybe make ladies Gaelic footballers or young soccer players go, well, especially ladies Gaelic footballers, because I know you're from a Gaelic football background, Alison, go, maybe I might have a look at this?
Yeah, like for example, the two girls from Laois I'm going to speak on, like Emma Hooban was an underage footballer from Laois, Leah Tarpey, from speaking to people over in Sarsfield's GA club, which was the club she would have played for. I know she represents Tullamore, but she's from Mount Mellick. She would have played for Laois senior team, and she would have played club football. So there's two players that I suppose now have gone into rugby. So look, people are going to prefer different sports, but I think it does make it more attractive, that you can go, I could be contracted to play rugby in a game that I love. So obviously Gaelic football, now a lot of the girls are going to Australia, and that's attractive for them, but we have something here on home soil now that might attract an athletic girl. And I totally agree with Michelle in terms of multilateral development of, I think it's important to get into rugby when you're young, so you develop those skills and the understanding. Like Dan O'Brien today was like playing Gaelic football, I think, right up to this. So it's you're playing rugby, so you are developing the skills and the understanding while you're still, playing other sports. When you maybe get to 15, 16, you specialise. We see that in some of the greatest sports people in the world. They weren't specialising early, with the exception of gymnastics or diving or some of those sports. But I think it will. I really do, because I have a lot of friends that would have played Gaelic football, and I played for Laois myself for 2 years, and they'd say, Alison, I feel like rugby is becoming more attractive to girls because they see potential to represent Ireland, be a professional athlete, get paid for it, travel the world. So I think now, look, at the same time, there's those GA players that will have no interest in playing rugby, and that'll always be the case. But yourself, it is attractive now.
Let's hear from Greg McWilliams, the Ireland coach. He's speaking after that 57-22 win over in Japan today.
A difficult start, but the way the team came back and showed huge spirit and showed the evolution that you wanted to see on the pitch tonight, incredible result.
Yeah, there's still more in the tank. I think going 15-0 down so early in the game, their resilience to come back shows just how confident they are in each other and how confident they are in what we're doing. And I thought they etched themselves back into the game really well. I thought they controlled the ball well. I thought they controlled territory well. And, we gave 6 new Irish players the opportunity to go out and represent their country today. And to a man, it's so exciting for the future. I hope there's girls at home now watching this with their family and they're seeing these role models. Just a very special group. And they've worked really hard. And now we've got to get better for next week. So hopefully they can enjoy tonight. They should do, because they've worked bloody hard. Rest tomorrow and we're back in on Monday on our install day. We've got to get better and we've got to constantly evolve. But I'm just so proud of the group. I'm so proud of the staff. And hopefully back home now we gave the Irish people something to be proud of. It's what we always wanted to do. And I can't ask for more than what they've done today.
Greg,
well done, Greg.
Thanks.
Greg McWilliams there speaking after the 57-22 win for the Irish women's rugby team in Japan. Spurs, by the way, beaten Wolves 1-0 with Harry Kane scoring the winner at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We got Jackie Shiels on the line. Jackie, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Apologies for joining late.
No, it's one of the technology is not always 100%, folks. So we completely understand that, and so just bear with us. Jackie, what did you make of the performance in the game?
I actually really enjoyed watching it. I think that probably the girls mentioned it was a very solid, experienced pack, and you could see that they dominated up front. During the Six Nations, there was problems with the scrum and problems with the line out. They seemed to be non-existent today. Now, obviously, Japan didn't really contest the line out with the height difference, and I think Ireland definitely had the upper hand in the weight category in the maul and the scrum. So, look, they played to their advantage. They played to areas they were strong, which is good to see. And then, as Greg talked about there in the back, you saw some new exciting talent coming out. I think the key thing, I was chatting there to Michelle earlier, we talk about these young girls. You've got Dan O'Brien there, and you've got Aoife Dalton and players like that. But I think the key is, and this is what the older generation of Irish players have been harping on about for years, is that there needs to be a pathway. And you can see that these girls have had a pathway. They've clearly played at a high level. They haven't just come from young clubs into the AIL and straight into international. Some of these girls haven't even played AIL, but they've clearly been playing for Leinster, underage. There's been structures put in place. They've played at high-profile games. They played at under-18 with Ireland. I know Katie Fatene had coached some of them. So you can see that the step up yes, obviously Japan, it's not like a Six Nations game, but still they're an international team. They're going to a World Cup. The step up was there, but these girls were comfortable. And you could see they were well placed. You had, Dana playing inside Enya Breen, who I thought was a very good game. I'm delighted to see Enya. I think Enya probably is one player that we need to see kind of cement a position, get consistency, because she hasn't had consistency for the last couple of years. And when she's given consistency, you can see she can be a real target for them. So it was great to see. It was a good win. Next week, I'm sure there'll be a few changes. And then obviously, as I think it was Ali said there, it's about success breeding success, and the Six Nations will be the real test for this team next year.
Yeah, and you have a soccer background from underage, don't you, as well, Jackie? And you see the success of the Irish women's soccer team potentially going to the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand next year, the advertising in the sky and all that kind of thing. And rugby needed to step up, and obviously you guys all had to take a stand last year. You did that. There seems to have been a positive response from the RFUs. So it is hopefully a corner being turned now.
Yeah, 100%. The Irish ladies soccer team have done fantastic. They're selling out crowds there in Tallinn, and I've heard rumours that they're going to Aviva, but I support the girls and what they're saying. The key thing is to build that ground, build that support network, and I suppose remain true to Tala for a while longer until they get bigger audiences. But yeah, the reality is, success does breed success. People want to watch successful teams and teams that are doing well. So yeah, Ireland has to step up. Obviously England are paving the way in the Six Nations. They've had contracts for quite a while. Their league is very entertaining. It's on BT Sports, it's on YouTube. And then you have obviously Scotland and Wales, who've had to put contracts in place to prepare them for the World Cup. There's still speculations over how their contracts will look going forward. But Ireland has to do something. A couple of years ago, we were definitely top 2, top 3, and it was consistent. We would never worry about Wales, we would never worry about Scotland, and now it's a dog race at the bottom there. So Ireland, we look at our sevens programme and they're doing very, very well there, but there has to be a marrying up of the two. They have to support the 15 players. And I listened to Ali there. You look back and wonder, how did you do it with a full-time job? At the time I was living in England, and I remember I used to get up and I'd fly over 4:30. I'd get up, get a flight at 6:30, train Saturday, Sunday, and go back to a full-time job. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable if we want to be competitive.
Yeah, Michelle, what the season looks like now, we have the All-Ireland League between September and December. We've Interpros then in January and February. Is this a new look season? Is this a season that can be very much a positive to feed us into the Six Nations?
Yeah, I think that that'll be the natural pathway. I follow the pathway from club to province to international. I think that needs to be more embedded into it, so we can actually see the growth of players like we've seen the underage. So I'm really looking forward to this season to see how it plays out. But also you need to remember the domestic game cannot suffer as a result of building your international team, because they feed off each other. So this year they're trialling the league finished before Christmas and then a cup while the interprovincials is on. So you don't want the talent that's not involved in the Interpros or even not in games Interpros to not play any games during those times. So it's really important that all kind of facets of the domestic game isn't left. Like, you want to build up the underage, like you have Katie Fitzhenry there looking at the national development talent squad. So it's brilliant to have someone there for that. But also you have players there that have played a number of years, though they're kind of cute, that kind of way, as in the younger girls can learn a lot from them. So you want to make sure that you keep girls interested in the domestic game, but push on through from Christmas, and then the Irish team can then fall into the Six Nations calendar. However, will there be sevens players available to play in the AIL League? Will they push on into Interpros? How will that feed into the overall picture? So you kind of see how are these things kind of linking in together, rather than the sevens players just being available for 1, 2, 3 games of the Six Nations. When you can actually see today when Enya Breen got good game time, she's playing one out, she's leading from the front, she had really good distribution skills, a DSP off 12 worked wonders, hit Maeve Dealand that 13 channel and really punished Japan. So you want to see Enya playing games, you want to see all these players, that the forwards have a unit, you want the backs now to develop as a unit also, and who knows what can happen then come the Six Nations next year.
We were speaking to Michelle Claffey there, Jackie Shiels and Allison Miller, former internationals on the Irish women's rugby team, and that win in Japan 57-22 earlier on. How do you feel the season is kind of framed, as it were, now, Alison, going forward for the AIL and with the Interpros?
I think obviously Michelle is 100% right. You don't want the domestic players to suffer because of the Irish. You want to build the league and have those players playing. And I'd love Jackie is a great person to speak about women's rugby, I suppose, because she's played here in Ireland and she's played in England, and but she said the Tyrrell's league is so competitive and it's highly watched. I'd love to see our league becoming like that. So hopefully it'll work. I think there's a little bit of adjustment probably still to be done in certain areas, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the season goes and unearthing some more players. And I think what the girls were saying was spot on. You see someone like Enya getting her chance there, and her distribution skills, she's really become a second playmaker, and Ireland got so much change out of her in the middle, as a distributor. And I think we hope to see those players that play today playing for their clubs regularly, and that's part of their development. It's like hope it's like the English Premiership, that you're seeing top players play week in, week out, and making it a really good league, making it really sustainable, making it attractive, and that we don't talk about it, in a negative sense, that we talk about it in a positive sense. So, and like Michelle, I think it is important that you go from your club into provincial to Ireland, that you can see that progression, because there's a time and place for everyone to develop. And I think, stepping up eventually like that through the ranks rather than being, thrown into international level, that's too hard for all players. So happy at the moment. We'll see how it goes. So
yeah, what I'm hearing here from Alison and from Michelle, Jackie, is that obviously with the men's game you have the European Cup, you have the United Rugby Championship. Maybe here it's more important to have a strong league and then a national team. The Interpros can happen, but maybe the league is the strongest thing to have, as you've experienced in England.
Yeah, 100%. No, I've played 3 seasons now in the AL, and my first year back was 2016, and I'll be honest, that I didn't find that a great season to play. I was at Belva at the time, and Belva were an excellent club, but the league itself, there just wasn't much about it. Now, I must say, I found last year's league really, really good. I think what they tried last year was excellent. They had, a round robin, and the top 4 teams played off against each other. It was just very tight for time after Christmas. I think it was squashed in then just before the Six Nations, so it was difficult. This year, obviously, it's very condensed, the AL. I hope and I look forward to see how it works with Blackrock. And then, as Michelle said, the international players will then, and then interprovincial players will then go off into their expenses, and club players then get an opportunity to play at that level with their clubs in the cup. So the ideas and they're trialling new things, which is really key. And like last year, our AIL final was on TG Carr. You had the interprovincial games on TG Carr. That's all really positive. It's now just about grabbing that and pushing on one step more. Having maybe the games available on YouTube. I know it doesn't sound like an amazing thing to start, but it's a start, and then moving on from there. But the league is definitely more competitive, and as Alison said, it's really important that we get those contracts in place and potentially bring some of our players who have left in the last couple of years back into the Irish setup to be playing in the Irish setup. I'd love to see Sam Monaghan playing in the Irish league. I'm sure lots of girls love a crack off the international players. That's the reality of it. You only get better when you're playing against the best players in the country. So if our best players are all gone off to England, then how do our players get better here? How do club players improve their game if our best players aren't here to compete against?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're going to see is an interesting year, aren't we, Michelle? But I think the professional contracts is such a huge thing, because you can see it with the players going down to Australia. And I don't know how you did it. You did it for the love of it, but you played rugby at a high level. You had a job. And you also, all 3 of you had serious injuries. Michelle, I think you had a serious knee injury, didn't you, to deal with? Like, not only in terms of just dealing with that, but psychologically dealing with that.
Yeah, I've done both ACLs, I've done my meniscus, I've done my ankle. So I have a number of surgeries, and it's how you bounce back. I suppose the love for the game is what brought me back, and I'm a bit stubborn. So I just wanted to get back. I wanted to play. I wanted to see what I could do as a person, what I could contribute to my club. And then anything that came extra was a bonus. But like these players will have access to so much more, I suppose, medical advice as well, and time, and they'll probably recover quicker, as in rehab quicker, and can focus more on recovery and get back playing as well, which is so exciting, because you'll have everyone available for selection, and not because they got up early that morning, didn't get to eat properly, were tired, go and train, they pulled a hamstring. So they can look after themselves and, I suppose, put their best foot forward for selection, and then perform at the highest level that they can possibly be, because they've been given a proper chance.
And Alison, you broke your leg as well, didn't you, in your career?
Yeah, towards the end of my career, I did a double leg break, a compound fracture, which was potentially going to be career threatening, but I came back from it. But I think we can't underestimate what these contracts will do, how quick the players will improve. I saw that in sevens when players came in and trained every single day, their rate of improvement. So we're going to see that, and I think also there probably won't be the same I suppose perceived gap between a sevens back and a 15s back, because hopefully those 15s players will be training every day and resting, and they won't be having to balance that. So yeah, I did have a very serious injury, but I think I got back from it in good time. And I suppose on a contrast, I suppose it was good actually having a job during that time. So that's probably one part of the thing that I did like at the time, was that you could go into work and concentrate on something else, but that's not sustainable for the current players when all the rest of the teams are going professional.
Yeah, Jackie, you broke your leg as well, so you've all had, and maybe all players will have, these types of injuries.
Yeah, of course. It comes with the territory. We know we play a game that's a physical game, and that's the reality of it. But it's about the support networks you have in place, and the current batch of players probably have more medical and personal support. But we, back then we worked out well because we had our friends, and like Alison said, we had our jobs. And that's one thing that, would be a slight concern of mine. It's really important. I haven't played a lot of my rugby in England, and knowing kind of what went on before England became professional, I saw young girls who were in the setup and then kind of got brushed aside when better players came in, and they kind of are caught in a limbo then when they're in their mid-20s with no real career direction. It's really important that, I'm obviously a teacher, so I know the importance of education, but it's really important that these young players, even if they have contracts, regardless of what contract they have, that they're getting that guidance about, okay, well, look, what's the next stage? Because we all know that we were fortunate enough, we had injuries, but we came back and played. There are some players who get injuries and are unable to come back and play. So it's about having that right setup. So they have their contracts, but they have people guiding them that, look, education is important, be it a part-time course, be it an evening course, a couple of hours, something that they have, that if rugby doesn't work out for them, for whatever reason, that they have something to fall back on. Because that's the issue with it. I've seen girls in England who are very exciting. They were on the fringe of the English team, and they put everything aside and they focused on rugby, and then suddenly somebody else came up and took their spot and they were kind of brushed aside. So we just have to make sure that we balance that. That's the key for me, I think.
Just before we go, it's hard to say this before we go, and thanks for coming on, Alison Miller, Michelle Claffey and Jackie Shiels. Michelle and Jackie, you got married last month, so congratulations. Michelle, a brilliant day, no doubt.
Oh, absolutely brilliant day. Ali Miller was there, so she can say if it was any good or not. We had a fantastic day.
I have to say,
great to see a family and friends.
Really, really good wedding. Best speeches ever.
Yeah. Although pre-season this week now hasn't been enjoyable after a month away on a honeymoon. So let's just say I got handed a GPS for the first time ever, and I wasn't too excited at Blackrock this week.
Where'd you go, Jackie?
Oh, we did a bit of everything. We went to Peru and we went to Mexico, and then we did Vegas. And I think the highlight for both of us was Peru, but I dragged her to the CrossFit Games to watch a bit of that, and then we ended up in New York. But let's be honest now, we've got a few weeks of hard training ahead of us if we're going to make any sort of hay at this first.
And I bet you were in the gym every day, though. I bet you found
a gym the odd time, Ali. It wasn't too often.
Michelle, did you see any rugby pitches?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was just what was on the telly, if there was any there. We didn't see any.
Very good.
We did a couple of 5Ks, that was about it.
Many congratulations and happiness to you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So Michelle Claffey, Jackie Shiels and Allison Miller, thanks much for your time on Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk, talking about that win for the Irish women's rugby team against Japan, 57 points to 22. Our rugby coverage on Off the Ball is with thanks to Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in. It has finished 1-0 to Tottenham against Wolves in the Premier League. Lots of matches between 3 and 5 on Football Saturday with Stephen Elliott, our special guest, joining Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward. For all the discussion on the Premier League scores, we're going to bring you that after this.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.